Sega is without a doubt one of our favorite companies in the game industry. Much like Nintendo, they have developed games that have put gameplay and fun above all else, understanding the importance of customer satisfaction and utilizing several high-quality franchises to keep those hungry fans coming back for more. Of course, that's what we'd believe were we writing this article 15 years in the past. Sadly, it's been a frustrating time to be a Sega fan these past few years. From publishing blunders to kicking their chief money-making hedgehog to the curb and outsourcing him to inexperienced developers, all while trying to keep Yakuza, one of the last bastions of quality gaming from Sega, away from Western audiences. Not to mention the constant neglect of some classic franchises that are just ripe for a revival. The following are our top 5. No one could touch Sega during its Dreamcast era in terms of sheer gaming quality. Well, yeah, maybe that's debatable. But it's a shame that console did so poorly, because not only was the machine vastly ahead of its time in the console market, it was also a time where Sega, akin to Rare's relationship with Nintendo, were just on absolute top form. Sega and their various studios developed some true cult classics in this era, helping the Dreamcast carve its own slice of gaming history. One such game, ChuChu Rocket, one of the most sporadic and often stressful puzzle games ever made. The game's speedy gameplay came as no surprise given its designer, Yuji Naka, the father of Sonic. You had to guide small armies of mice, rather appropriately known as ChuChus, into rockets by placing arrows on the ground to alter their direction on the board. What was this in aid of? Well, escaping the most bizarre-looking cats, known as kapu-kapus, in gaming history. Yeah, but it's fun. The game also had a full suite of multiplayer options, and that was certainly the best part of the game. As was the nature of the Dreamcast, ChuChu Rocket was also one of the first console games to feature online play. Given its simple yet deceptively tough to master gameplay, local and online multiplayer support, and its casual-friendly graphical style, ChuChu Rocket truly is a game that can be enjoyed by everyone and would fit right in as a digital title on the current gen of consoles. It's quite sad that Altered Beast, one of Sega's earliest arcade games, only ever had one game to its name. Well, there was the terrible PS2 beat-em-up, but no one likes to talk about that. Nowadays, this side-scroller is known for its cheesy, digitized voices, chiefly the opening Rise From Your Grave sound clip, which has in recent years become something of a meme. Hilarious voice acting aside, Altered Beast featured the then unique ability to alter your buff Schwarzenegger type into a beast, funnily enough. Transformations were different on each stage and included a werewolf with a flying kick, a somersaulting bear, and a cheetah man. No, not that kind of cheetah man. Needless to say, transforming into a beast felt like a huge achievement, with Sega rewarding the player with an epic sequence showing your guy's head morphing into that of an animal. Accompanied by a triumphant scream, the music then kicks itself up a notch while you wreak havoc on the rest of the stage's enemies. Altered Beast is a game that deserves a revival. Throw in a longer game with branching paths, more transformations, and maybe even more playable characters with different movesets upon transforming, and you have a recipe for a highly replayable beat-em-up. We will admit that it could be quite the challenge in developing a Space Channel 5 reboot. A rhythm game that essentially had the structure of a stage musical, both Space Channel 5 games were quite short and didn't feature as many songs as your Guitar Heroes or Project Divas. But what they lacked in quantity, they rather speedily made up for in quality, accompanied by a visual style inspired by 70s sci-fi. You know, the type where everything looked like a bubble and people dressed in brightly colored latex? But Space Channel 5 took this theme and had a meteorite crater-sized blast with it. You play as Ooh La La, the bubbly, pigtailed host of her own swing and report show. Now, nobody said reporting the news in the form of endearingly catchy musical numbers was terribly efficient, but we'll be damned if it doesn't have you mesmerized throughout the entire game. Hitting the right notes and saving civilians from cheesy sci-fi peril increased your ratings, whilst doing the opposite dropped them, presumably converting viewers to Channel 42, featuring Ooh La La's cocky rival, Pudding. Truly a game where one should expect the unexpected. Space Channel 5 deserves a reboot on the sole premise that its theme is practically timeless, and that not a whole lot of games can replicate the impression it left on its fans who to this day demand a Part 3 from Sega. Okay, this genuinely baffles us that we have not seen an entry in the Jet Set Radio series since 2002, not including the HD remake. That's 13 years. For such an explorable IP, that really needs to change. As already mentioned, Sega's older franchises would benefit greatly on digital platforms. Most of Sega's games from Jet Set Radio's era were small, not including Shenmue, of course, which arguably has a spiritual successor in the form of Yakuza, yet focused and highly polished titles. And no, we're not saying put them on mobile devices like they did with that god-awful free-to-play Crazy Taxi game. We're talking about rebooting these franchises, not putting them out to pasture. All we're saying is, if Sega wanted to develop a smaller game akin to the original Jet Set Radio, there are plenty of fans out there who would lap up a reboot. That is, if Sega is unwilling to go on with a much larger game similar to Future, which, let's face it, they probably are. As it stands, Jet Set Radio is a potential moneymaker that's just locked up, gathering dust in Sega's old IP storage cupboard. Sure, neither Jet Set Radio game sold extremely well, but a new entry would restore some goodwill in the core Sega fanbase who are crying out for the return of Sega's golden era. Alright, number 1. No, we're obviously just kidding here. This game's terrible. Streets of Rage 2 is one of our favorite Mega Drive games, and hands down one of the best games Sega has ever developed. The original game was an interesting romp, but featured awkward controls in comparison to the likes of Final Fight and Sega's own Golden Axe. The sequel, Streets of Rage 2, blew the original out of the water, and while the third in the trilogy continued that level of quality, Sega went gung-ho on the difficulty, making the game borderline unfair. Streets 2 hit the sweet spot, mixing perfectly tuned controls, satisfying beat-em-up gameplay, and a masterpiece of a soundtrack into one tiny cartridge. Now, while the recent and rather excellent fan-made Streets of Rage remake combined the best of all three games into one package, we think Sega could take cues from this project were they ever to resurrect this timeless brawler.